Hi everyone, and welcome to your full moon forecast for the sort of mid-September kind of, which will take us, I think, from about the 10th or so right through into about the 24th, 25th, when we've got our next new moon in Libra. So we're going to look at some moon and Pisces themes, and also some of the key transits that are happening during this period. I've done the cosmic calendar at the end for members, so it's all kind of in one video, and then I'll just do a link to the different places in my newsletter so it's easy to find stuff. But yeah, essentially it's a bit of a shift in energy. We go sort of through at least a week of quite mixed up, confused kind of energy, kind of comedy of errors type of stuff. So just be aware of that when it comes to maybe meetings, negotiations, that kind of thing. And not the ideal time to sort of discuss anything important, go for a job interview, or like try and work out a deal, that kind of thing. And then we've also got some interesting Venus, Mars, Pluto transits that are happening, which I discuss in detail in the cosmic calendar. So there's an interesting link back to February or so when we had the new moon in Pisces. In a lot of ways, we are kind of closing out some of the things that we began then, or sort of cycles or situations or kind of themes that began then. And of course, at that time, we also had a Venus, Mars, Pluto sort of set of contacts. So I will link that video for you in the top right hand corner if you're interested in going back and just having a look at some of those themes again. But anyway, let's have a look at and see what we can look forward to for the next 2 weeks or so. So in terms of overall themes, this, as I say, it's a very interesting energy. We move from that quite precise and discerning energy of Virgo and that new moon in Virgo that we had into a lot more nebulous and kind of loose and sort of soft energy, but it can also potentially be a bit confusing because of Mercury retrograde. So in amongst that, we also have to consider that it's a kind of important point of like undoing and sort of redoing, if you like, or kind of start making positive changes, because first of all, the lunar cycle, this particular one anyway, is governing the equinox. We move, the sun moves into Libra on the 23rd of September this year, which, in astrology marks the equinox. So this is the time when, as I always say, when the sun reaches the equator, and then it shifts from one hemisphere into another. So we get a shift in seasons. And that tends to bring a kind of in terms of the zeitgeist and the sort of the herd mentality, it does tend to bring about a kind of a tipping point, an internal tipping point, where we start to feel that we want to kind of pivot, or that we need to kind of make some changes as we kind of move from one season to another. So there may be that at the back of your mind that's sort of motivating you to let go of some situations and sort of embrace new, perhaps the unknown. And I think that may or have something to do with the energies at this full moon, because we've got some interesting contacts with between the luminaries and Uranus, positive ones, which I think are going to encourage us to make some changes, to take some risks, to maybe try and do things differently when it comes to our habits, or that kind of thing. But equally, you've got some difficult energy with the Venus-Mars square, and that can sometimes bring up sort of anger issues, conflict in relationships, and power struggles around things like money, and also things like physical health, physical like looks. Venus is a lot to do with beauty, so that there may be sort of something in this idea of kind of like getting fit or trying to get into shape, that type of thing. There might be a sort of a tension within you, but equally it could be, it may sort of predominantly be sort of expressed through the realm of emotions for a lot of people. So I am going to talk about that in a bit more detail further on in the forecast. But needless to say, this lunar cycle happens on the same day that Mercury stations and turns retrograde. So this can add to the vagueness and the sort of nebulousness that I was talking about that's already there with the sign of Pisces, because the full moon happens in Pisces. So there may be an element of mist and fog kind of descending, confusion, raining, and there may be a need to sort of clarify, to ask questions, and not to sort of like make assumptions or sort of like jump to conclusions, particularly in the week that follows this full moon, because there's a lot of energy around that's quite tricky and and as I say, it does tend to blur boundaries and make it difficult to sort of think clearly or to sort of get answers. So you might want to just sort of bear that in mind. And then, as I say, we also are closing out a cycle that began in February at the new moon in Pisces, so a 6-month cycle possibly ending. On a mundane level, I am kind of wondering whether this is going to be an important turning point in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, because that started at around about this time, and it's interesting how there's an overlap in terms of the themes from then to now. So yes, I'll link that video in the in the top right corner in case you want to sort of go back and have a look to see if anything sort of jogs your memory. But as I say, it's an interesting time, a time of undoing, of letting go what's no longer serving, of almost surrendering some things that you are finding impossible to fix. Virgo loves to fix things. There may be some things that are just not fixable at this time, or that you might need to sort of let go of. But the good thing is that once you do, you're making room for positive changes that are going to come in with that, the sun, the moon, and Uranus contact. So that's quite positive. Now, the Sabian symbol is also very interesting. This particular full moon occurs on around about the 18th degree of Pisces, so around about 17 degrees and 41 minutes. And the Sabian symbol is in a huge tent. A famous revivalist conducts his meetings with spectacular performance. And of course, it made me think of, that very famous evangelist, Billy Graham. And here's sort of an image. I managed to find an image of one of his tents that he kind of would pitched in Los Angeles, and I think it fits with that. There's a whole sort of tradition of like tent revivalism that I think that this particular Sabian symbol is sort of pointing to, and it's interesting. I mean, it does talk about kind of evangelism and people whipping up emotions, and there is to an extent with whether it's like preaching or teaching or it's sort of anything like that there is an element of theatre involved, and I think that that's what this particular Sabian symbol is sort of pointing to, is somebody who is able to like tap into your emotions or the collective emotions and sort of like whip them up. So it can be quite an emotional time potentially, this full moon. It is very much, Pisces, as I say, it can be about being in the emotion ocean, and it does have the sign on, in and of itself is very empathic and does often have a problem with boundaries. So it might be difficult sometimes to actually tell where you end and where somebody else begins, and that can be quite tricky, because sometimes you can think that you're feeling an emotion, but actually you're just acting like a psychic sponge for the people around you or the atmosphere in a room, that kind of thing. So I think it will be very good during this 2-week period to practice some psychic protection, to do some like cleansing of your space, of your auric field, and just try it on a daily basis to sort of like practice emotional hygiene, kind of journal, get things out of your system, keep things flowing, and try to sort of keep the air clear, if you like, so that it's easier to sort of navigate rather than kind of getting bogged down or feeling overwhelmed. I mean, other key words associated with this are being in charge, ecstasy, so there's that sense of, enthusiasmos that we often talk about, being filled with a God, ecstatic states that can be associated with religious or mystical experiences, loud voices, a lot here about acoustics, so it may be that that somehow is very important, that you get messages through, say, music or hearing somebody on the radio or hearing somebody speak, that kind of thing. Preaching, mind control, performing. So there is a slight element with this of, as I say, showmanship, but also of like the media circus, or of like things getting, you getting swept up in a certain like mood, or like say trend on social media. I think there's potentially a danger here of getting swept up in something that may feel difficult to extract yourself from, kind of getting swept up in a wave of like a collective wave of emotion. And as we know, those don't necessarily last, but they can do a lot of damage. And I think it's probably going to be very important to, as I say, exercise discernment. If we think of that, that major theme that we had with at the Virgo new moon was exercising discernment, of not being too taken in, like enchanted, because that was something I kept thinking about afterwards. when I did my last forecast to do with fairy, that, they do often say that fairies are not the sort of little sprites that you see in children's stories, that, if you listen to people that encounter the fairy folk, they say that, you do have to have your wits about you and be quite careful, because these folk can be quite tricksy. So I think there's that element to this particular full moon as well, that there's a need to avoid hysteria, not to get sort of whipped up or manipulated by other people, or by, as I say, a sort of a crowd like mood, like, like a sort of hive mind sort of, mindset, and of just perhaps trying to sort of maintain a certain degree of self-containment. And I think that's something that we'll see when we get to the human design, that there is something in this about clearing out the mental clutter and surrendering like beliefs or whatever that aren't working, but in order to sort of make way for like aha moments or realizations, that kind of thing. The lunar phase is also interesting. There's again another sort of theme around spirituality. So this is Pisces 15 to 20, and it's to a large extent about mindfulness. So James Burgess talks a lot about how spirituality must be sort of pragmatic as well as sort of mystical. So it must meet and solve real world problems as well as sort of address like philosophical or hypothetical issues. So in that sense, like imagined ones. And that there is also a need, possibly, we may feel the need during this 2-week period, to find congruence between the outer and the inner. And that could be, to do with reconciling our beliefs with our behavior, so a kind of like a path to integrity and inner harmony. But it could also be about reconciling how we feel on the inside compared to, say, what's going on around us with other people, or, in the news, or whatever the case may be, in order to feel a certain degree of serenity. And then other ways that this can manifest is getting an appreciation of intelligent design. So perhaps having some kind of experience that makes you appreciate the beauty and mystery and wonder of the cosmos. In this sense, he talks about revelation requires a path, and that these paths may differ for everybody, but ultimately, any will do. It will still sort of take you to a similar place, if you like. And then also the need for teachers to guide us to places that we may not even know exist. This idea of, say, shamanic journeying, or of kind of imaginal journeys to the imaginal realm, which, as I say, in the Hermetic tradition is associated with the Ogdoad, or the sort of the eighth sphere, in terms of like the region between Saturn and the fixed stars, and of course with what with Corbin and others talked about as being the realm of the celestial earth, the realm of where you have real encounters. Not, we sort of talk about them as archetypes, but I'm always interested in what Peter Kingsley, kind of wrote, because he sort of went and he did recently he did like another biography of Jung, and he went and looked at some of his private collection and at books that he'd read in notes and that kind of thing, and he talked about how Jung couched these things in sort of pseudo-scientific language, like archetypes and that kind of, to make it acceptable to the sort of the psychological, or the psychiatric community. But actually what he was talking about were mystical encounters, or sort of encounters of a more like esoteric nature with actual like spirits and sort of like ethereal entities, if you like. So there may be, this may be a time when you have interesting dreams or experiences that feel hyper real, and that's what a lot of the visionaries and mystics say about this particular realm, is that it's actually, when you're in it, it's more real than the sort of material realm. And I guess if you are somebody who believes that consciousness is the basis of all reality, then I guess that makes sense. And then there's also this kind of, I suppose, fitting with this idea of the Virgo Pisces polarity, this idea of universality versus particularity, which I did talk about a little bit when I did that sort of thing on thoughts on the the Sturgeon full moon, that there's this idea of wanting the truth, but that it's almost as though, if you think about the 4 levels of hermeneutics, it's almost as though you start out, certainly with the first 2 levels of kind of symbolic interpretation, where there are many interpretations of the same symbol. So if you think about that on a kind of an individual or a cultural level, that there are multiple interpretations of the same symbol, but that as you kind of get further up the like the ladder, if you like, you move up to the sort of the realms of, like the anagogical levels, and things become a bit more kind of like refined, then the journey becomes less different and more the same. And this is when, kind of there's this paradoxical relationship between individuality and particularity on one hand, that we all have these individual experiences, and yet this is surrendered when the universal pattern is finally revealed. So when you kind of get to the sort of the higher levels, and our kind of human like layers that make us sort of like different fall away, and we become sort of similar. So this is very interesting, as I said, this paradox that's kind of at work within the Virgo Pisces polarity. And then he also talks about things like nourishment and belonging, so this idea of kind of like tribe and a food, and these are really interesting metaphors that Tom Cheatham uses a lot when he talks about the way that we kind of take things in. We take the world in, we almost ingest it, and then have to spend time in contemplation, digesting what we've ingested in order to sort of really appreciate the gifts of nature and of life. That there's this, we tend to have this false divide, between the material and the spiritual, but you could say at some level that everything is here to nourish us, and that everything is spiritual. This idea that the world is already sacred. So I suppose it's kind of rooted in this idea of appreciation and gratitude, and of the sort of community that comes with eating, with breaking bread, and family, that kind of thing. And then finally, this idea of surrender, of what's that famous saying about how life is a dance, and that we must allow life, that the dance kind of moves through us, if you like. So this idea that life lives us. So as we evolve our ability to manage our affairs, however vast and complex, we somehow learn that we can never manage them as well as they can manage themselves. So this idea of kind of trust, of surrender, and of like allowing life to live through us type of thing. I think it fits quite interestingly with the idea of the human design, where a lot of practitioners will say that when you're looking at the body graph, it's kind of like giving you a sense of the vehicle, but that the vehicle drives itself, and that we actually do much better in life when we allow the vehicle to drive itself, rather than trying to sort of like control in areas where we don't have control, say in centers where things are not activated, and sort of play to our strengths and our kind of our sort of, not our preferences, but maybe the things that we kind of naturally like drawn towards, and that this will remove resistance, which I think is very in keeping with this idea of letting go and sort of letting God almost, which is, I think, a strong theme at this particular full moon. Just as a kind of a guide, of course, I've done you a little cheat sheet. So this time you look for the two signs on either side of the chart, depending on what your rising sign is. And these are the two areas of your life that essentially you may feel tension, or where you might sort of feel an urge, you might feel like a pull towards perfectionism or idealism, that kind of thing, feeling as though it's impossible to sort of ever like get anywhere, or you might find that you're kind of closing certain things out, or trying to balance those two areas of your life. So I'll leave you to pause the video, find your rising sign, and then, as I say, find the corresponding sign opposite, and those will be the houses where the sun and the moon will be during this 2-week period, or sort of setting the tone at this full moon. So yeah, as I say, check that out in your own time, and I'm going to carry on with the forecast. And now we move on to the chart for this this lunar phase, and again, quite a simple chart. So we got the sun and the moon in Virgo and Pisces, and close to Pisces, but I mean close to the moon, but not conjunct it, is Neptune, which is retrograde. So the two will move kind of close to each other, and at some point in the next couple of days after the full moon, the moon will make a conjunction to Neptune. You can see here it's at about 6 degrees of separation. And obviously that means that the sun will oppose Neptune, which I get into in the cosmic calendar. But the key aspect in this particular full moon phase are these positive aspects to Uranus by the sun and the moon. So as I said, Uranus continues to sort of orbit close to the lunar node, particularly the north node. And I do see this as being about being open to new karmic experiences kind of coming in. If you think of geomancy and you think about the geomantic figure that rules the north node, it's all about letting, like, it's like a door opening and things sort of entering your life. It's about new experiences, and Uranus in and of itself is often about the novel or the new. It can sometimes bring about abrupt endings, but in this particular context, because we are talking about very positive aspects, I think it's asking us to be open and to welcome change or the new, or kind of novel ways of looking at things, doing things, seeing things, and being a little bit more perhaps adventurous than we might usually. Of course, a lot will depend on where Uranus falls in your chart and that kind of thing, but generally speaking, it's asking us to let go of the old and to open ourselves up to the new, that it might turn out surprisingly well, unexpectedly well. That's also something about Uranus, is that it does have this element of the unexpected about it. So, as I said, in a lot of ways, we are closing out some cycles. So this full moon happens, this phase covers the equinox, which will, as I said, happens on the 23rd, and it's also closing out that 6-month cycle that we began in February at the new moon in Pisces. So in a lot of ways we are, as I say, closing things out and letting things go. But I think the key thing is to see it as kind of like new broom sweeps clean, that we're letting go of certain things to make room for others, for new things. So clearing out the clutter, getting rid of any sort of emotional or physical or psychological baggage, perhaps doing a kind of a spring clean, getting ready for the new season. Maybe also, detoxing if that feels like relevant, with all the Virgo stuff. Venus is in Virgo, and so is the sun at this point. So you may feel that you want to do some kind of detox. The moon, as I say, will be approaching this conjunction to Neptune, and along with Mercury retrograde, Mercury turns retrograde on the same day. You can see it says S for station. So Mercury will turn retrograde in Libra, and as it does so, it's kind of going to go back over its opposition to Jupiter, and that could cause some like a sort of foggy or cloudy thinking, or just we might not make the best decisions, particularly, as I say, during the times of the opposition, and while all this kind of Neptune Pisces energy is around, which does tend to make us more right-brained, less logical, and also less able to kind of navigate detail, or to sort of to discern or differentiate one thing from another. Boundaries tend to sort of drop, and we may find it difficult to, as I say, to discern what is kind of like, what feels right, what doesn't, because our sense of empathy will be so strong. So we may kind of over-identify with other people, possibly abandon ourselves or our needs, or just fail to see when a situation isn't necessarily healthy for us, or where perhaps somebody else doesn't have our best interests at heart, whether that's an employer or somebody that we're kind of in relationship with, or a family member, or whatever the case may be. So I think it's really sort of worth being on your guard and practicing discernment over the next couple of weeks, as I said. Doing things like psychic protection, having some alone time or downtime, showering regularly, and sort of doing some cleansing, like oil cleansing or saging, that kind of thing. But also practicing surrender, where we feel that control issues come up, for example, like trying to practice surrender if there is nothing practically that we can do about a situation, rather than worry about it all the time. That's not really going to be very helpful either. So, as I say, I do expect the first week after this full moon to be quite confusing and possibly messy. But I think after that, once we start to get clarity, with these aha moments, or these sudden opportunities arriving in our life, or these changes, a lot of much clearer energy starts to come in, and then we can kind of forge ahead quite nicely. And as I say, I get into that in more detail day by day, blow by blow, in the cosmic calendar. So I'll save that for then. But I suppose the last thing I want to mention is that Venus and Mars will be approaching a square to each other, which will perfect on the 16th. So during that week that I was talking about following this full moon, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail shortly. So this particular Venus-Mars square, in a lot of ways, is again harking back to the conjunction that we had with Venus and Mars back in February and March. I think we had two conjunctions. The first one was in Aquarius, the second one was in Pisces, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, it was in Capricorn and in Aquarius. And I think at one point they both made a conjunction to Pluto. I think the first time around when they were in Capricorn. Now we're kind of moving to the square. So this is less about combining energies, and it's more about the friction that comes from difference. So I've called it Battle of the Sexes, but it doesn't necessarily have to be strictly, that kind of cliche of, men versus women. It could just be about the battle between our kind of more feminine and our more masculine side. So the part of us that wants to sort of initiate and take action on the one hand, and the other part of us that wants to wait and to sort of like attract on the other. So as I say, it does continue some of the themes also from the Virgo new moon, particularly around that contact we had between the 59 and the 6, the dance of intimacy. There may be some continuations of those themes, particularly because, as I say, that particular channel has a lot to do with sex. And I kept thinking about, the story of Aphrodite and Aries. They kind of fell in love, and then Aphrodite was promised to Hephaestus, the craft god, the god of the forge, but Aphrodite and Aries were so attracted to each other that they continued to see each other in secret, and then were kind of caught in flagrante by Hephaestus, who then sort of embarrassed them. And there may be something around that now of the humiliation that so often comes with taboo subjects like sex and sexuality and sexual mores. So there may be something in this about, as I say, people trying to sort of humiliate or shame other people for their sexual orientation or for their conduct, that kind of thing. Those themes might kind of tie into this, but it may also be to do with the kind of push-pull between Venus, who often wants to have a more kind of monogamous relationship, and Mars, as being sort of the archetypal male that wants to sort of like go out and enjoy sexual variety and that kind of thing. So there may be issues now around things like commitment, monogamy, that type of thing, particularly given that Uranus is so highlighted, by the full moon, and that sort of thing. So that's one way that it could work. But the good news is that even though there may be tensions, you often hear like psychologists talk about the power struggle phase in a relationship, and how it's really important because it gets both people to come out of that sort of codependent state of like, the sort of honeymoon period, and actually start to individuate a bit more and state their needs and try to sort of negotiate areas of difference in order to find kind of compromise. And, but before that is kind of reached, there may be some niggles and sort of arguments and friction. So this period could coincide possibly with a temporary separation, or, as I said, with a power struggle stage in a relationship. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic relationship. It could be, like a creative relationship, a sporting relationship. A lot of ways that this could work, as I say, but because of the many things that Venus and Mars rule. But I think it is pointing to the need to make that in order to make positive changes, you have to kind of navigate the tension between codependence on one hand and independence on the other, and also to sort of to mature, to move towards deeper levels of commitment, or into a more honest kind of empowered place, a place of truth. If there has been infidelity, for example, or if one person doesn't want to be monogamous, or that there does need to be truthful discussion around these things. And I think these will all kind of come up and have the opportunity to be resolved, because both Venus and Mars, once they square each other, move on to some very positive aspects with these planets, with Uranus, with Saturn, and with Pluto. So there will definitely be opportunities to, as I say, to work through these things and to possibly resolve or to kind of level up on some level. So it's not all kind of bad news. The only kind of caveat I would sort of say is that Mars in Gemini is going to turn retrograde at the end of October, and so this may mean that we need to revisit some of these issues. But the thing is, Venus will be moving much more quickly than Mars and in the opposite direction, so I don't think that they will kind of meet again until December. So it may be more that the Mars retrograde is a chance for the masculine archetype to sort of go over like certain things that have happened, or just work on like things like healing, or internal resolution, or working through like what masculinity means, and that kind of thing. So just something to be aware of. But as I say, that will only happen kind of end of October. So I put a couple of keywords at the bottom just to sort of spark your imagination a little bit, but don't necessarily feel that you have to be confined to those kind of keywords. It may well be that your that Venus and Mars are in very completely different parts of your chart. So a lot will depend, as I say, on house rulerships, house positions, and that kind of thing. And then we move on to the human design transit gates. So this again is where things get really interesting, and I always find it fascinating how these themes all overlap. So the moon will be in gate or hexagram 22. Now this is located again in the solar plexus. We've had a lot of moon phases in this particular area actually over the last few months. So this is the solar plexus in human design is, as I said, it's related to the emotions and to the emotional wave, which is governed by lunar cycles. Now, it's part of the 1222 channel, which is the channel of openness, and it is about expressing emotions. And I suppose that makes sense given that it connects the throat, the area of self-expression, to the emotional center. So it has a lot to do with the, as I say, the expression of emotion. But what's so interesting is that, in a way, it also has to do with catharsis. That it's about a kind of an outpouring of maybe, if you're not somebody who finds it easy to express your emotions, it may be that you feel compelled now to say how you feel, or to sort of get something out that's been sort of like sitting within you for a long time. So there's this definite need with the moon there to feel empowered and sort of guided from within your core. That really getting in touch with your emotions, that sense of emotional awareness, and sort of operating from there, listening to what your emotions are trying to tell you. But it's also, if we think about Richard Rudd's system, the gene keys, he talks about this as being the movement from dishonor to graciousness to grace. So there may be an element in what happens now that is somewhat serendipitous. So he says, on the spiritual level, grace is the blessing that comes through clear emotional alignment with consciousness. When challenged emotionally, grace can sometimes become disgrace, but I think even if we are kind of having to work through difficult emotions, I think if we look at the as I say, Uranus in this situation and the positive aspects that come with it, it's almost like if you allow that catharsis, that sort of that can come with Pisces and with sort of Neptune transits, that once you sort of allow that catharsis to happen, or you're honest about how you feel, the emotion tends to dissipate and sometimes turns into its opposite. So there's definitely an element here of kind of the miraculous or the gracious, of sort of like going, okay, what's that amazing grace, like what a wretch am I, that type of thing, of kind of really embracing your humanity, your sort of frailty, your like your flaws, and in that sense coming maybe into a place of greater self-acceptance, or perhaps if you've been terrified of rejection by somebody else, you're terrified that if you are honest about how you feel, and you think that other people wouldn't accept whatever that emotion is, you may be pleasantly surprised if it does kind of come out, maybe in a sort of fit of pique, or you're just being overwhelmed by the emotions of the full moon, that kind of thing. Now, on the other end of the scale, we've got the Sun in hexagram 47, line 1. So this is in the third eye, or the kind of the Ajna center. And it's sitting on the left-hand side. So this is more associated with kind of abstract thinking, kind of philosophical thinking, and with, mystical realizations, dreams, imagination, that kind of thing. And Chetan Parkin talks about this as being about realization. So there's this idea of reviewing, which I think fits very nicely with Mercury retrograde. This need to go back and to perhaps look at situations with fresh eyes, or just, maybe with less, now that they've passed, with, more dispassionately. And he says truth is constant but sometimes remains hidden from us. So this is an opportunity definitely to realize maybe some things that you didn't before, and that might be prompted or motivated by emotion. So there may also be this movement from mental exhaustion or hopelessness to realization. And again, I think this fits quite nicely with some of those aspects I was talking about earlier. It's done by making room for answers to emerge via a clearing out of the clutter. So that I think is where the Virgo stuff comes in. So by mental self-examination, you remove useless beliefs or else risk feeling overwhelmed. So a very strong need, as I say, to get clarity, to simplify, to purify, to take things down, reduce things to their basics or kind of first principles, and that will help you to get clarity. But don't expect that to be an overnight process. This is a lot to do with almost kind of emptying yourself and of kind of your desires or your will to control situations, and sometimes that's when clarity can kind of come in. So he does talk about how some things make sense, some things make no sense, and some things are plainly nonsense. You examine past associations for a realization that makes a distinction. And he also points out that the mind has limits, and I think this is one of the great lessons of spirituality, is that the mind is so closely aligned with the ego, and that like realizing the sort of the endless problems and sort of yes, but that the mind can bring in is such an obstacle to peace that I think after a while you realize that if you allowed yourself to always operate from the mind, it would always find new excuses or new problems, for you to kind of to stop you from actually sort of getting to your bliss, realizing your bliss, or sort of getting to a place of peace and self-acceptance, that kind of thing. Now, Richard Wright also associated with genetic memory and ancestral karma, and this he associates particularly with the 22 as well. And we did have an element of this in the 59. He talked a lot about how the genes can sort of be dishonest, and he talks about this as being about more to do with like the opposite end of the spectrum, with the mental, the psychological, and also the more spiritual aspects of where we can be dishonest, and how the two things need to be sort of reconciled, the sort of the above and the below. So a really interesting one, I think. And there's also a strong element or theme around beauty with hexagram 22. It is a lot about adornment. So you may feel that ties into some of the other themes around, Venus, for example, that gets sort of highlighted now. I keep thinking of, that ode on a Grecian urn, beauty is truth, truth beauty, that is all you know on earth, or all you need to know, something like that. So there may be something in that. We start here with the 10th, and it's the full moon in Pisces, so it's happening at around about 17 degrees and 41 degrees of Pisces. Obviously I have done a full moon forecast, so if you want access to that, then just sign up to my newsletter, which you can find on my website at astrologysphere.com/subscribe. And of course, if you are already a subscriber, then welcome to the next installment, or the next kind of part, the second half of my full moon forecast. So you can see on the same day that Mercury station, so this full moon is going to have that kind of energy where things are going to be slowing down, kind of. There may be the sense of, how sometimes when they say things kind of go into slow motion, and you have an opportunity to kind of course correct, or you just have the sense that you want to slam the brakes on and maybe change direction. That the full moon could well have that kind of feeling about it, because it is going to be quite an emotional one. You know, we are talking about the sign of Pisces, which is water, and which is very which doesn't have good boundaries, so it tends to sort of overflow, and that can obviously translate, you know, when we're talking about a full moon, in terms of like feelings of overwhelm, or just really being in the emotion ocean and not really being able to maybe see where you end and where somebody else begins, or it may be difficult also to get clarity about a situation over which you have a lot of feeling, you know, whether good or bad. So don't be surprised, as I say, if there is this slight element of kind of confusion, or of time slowing down on some level as Mercury stations and prepares, from our point of view anyway, to turn retrograde. So that's on the Saturday, and then the following day we have a trine between the Sun and Uranus, and this is because the luminaries are essentially in a positive aspect to Uranus. So it's interesting, it's almost as though things slow down enough for you to make some positive changes. It's almost like you have this, you know, sometimes when things are kind of ticking along, or when there's too much going on, we get distracted and we don't actually see, we aren't able to sort of zoom out and see the reality of a situation, or get the full picture, and so we may miss things. And I think what this full moon is kind of doing is it's bringing things to a head in such a way that but slowing things down at the same time, so that you're kind of almost able to see. It's like a car crash happening, and almost in slow motion you can course correct. And so these very positive aspects to Uranus from the moon and from the sun are giving us all a chance to course correct, to make positive changes, to maybe head in a new direction. And so I think, you know, that's the positive side of this full moon, is to see it as being an opportunity to make positive changes in your life. You know, either sort of personal changes in terms of external decisions, maybe kind of heading in a new and exciting direction, or it could be, as I say, making internal changes, because of course at a full moon we are essentially things come to a head and then they start to close out. So it's a good time to decide what you want to sort of like remove from your life, and that could be you know, people, places, or things, or it could be habits, you know, patterns that you keep repeating. It'll be different for everyone depending on, first of all, where Mercury falls in your chart, and then also, you know, where these planets are going to fall, where the Sun and the Moon are going to be, in terms of the sort of the Virgo Pisces axis, and of course Uranus, because that will definitely point to the sort of life area that it, you know, is best suited or kind of optimal for making changes. So that's Sunday, and it's quite a good day, I think, to be able to kind of pause and take stock and not really have to think about anything else. So you can really kind of go deep and you know, kind of write things down, journal, and write out pros and cons lists and whatever. But the thing with Uranus is that it's normally quite quick, and sometimes, of course, these changes can come from the outside. You know, Uranus is an outer planet, so sometimes it can come in the form of sudden plot twists, change in events, and also cutting. You know, with Uranus, because it was discovered at around about the time of the French Revolution, there can be the sense of suddenly cutting something off, or you know, a kind of like a severing of some kind. And that could be, say, somebody leaving, a situation suddenly ending, things moving off in a different direction, or like, you know, like flipping the switch, like the power, you know, you sort of flip the switch and you cut off the power. Say to, you know, like if a piece of technology is sort of malfunctioning, you can just flip the switch and kind of stop things from going any further. It's that kind of sense, and sometimes it can happen quite quickly and unexpectedly. So be prepared for the unexpected, but just know that ultimately, even if things seem maybe a little bit disastrous, or don't necessarily, that it's not always clear, you know, maybe it isn't clear at the time, that ultimately the changes are you know, going to be for the best for, you know, with those very positive aspects between the Sun, the Moon, and Uranus. So I think that's the best way to sort of see this. But of course, the next day we have a quincunx between the Sun and Saturn, and that may be asking you to make some adjustments. So of course there is always that feeling afterwards, you know, even if you've kind of like called a day on a job or a situation or whatever the case may be, there's always that feeling afterwards of kind of loss and grief, where you have to sort of process things, or maybe where you sort of think, oh God, did I act in haste? And then you have to sort of like maybe take remedial action of some kind, or just do damage limitation, or just sort of sit in the energy of, okay, what is this the right thing to do? Is there anything? Are there any kind of loose ends that I need to sort of tie up? Do I need to make an apologies? Just sort of patiently going through any obstacles and or kind of downsides to a situation, and sort of like mentally checking them off. So kind of going, okay, that wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right decision, and just sort of having that sort of difficult conversation with yourself that we sometimes have to have about, okay, this doesn't feel good, but maybe it was actually for the best, and just sort of acknowledging that, and then having the courage to actually do the difficult thing. So if it means, as I say, walking away from a situation, even though you may have sort of emotional ties to it, kind of if you're sort of seeing that it's not sort of right for you, there's something better for you, or on some level maybe it wasn't healthy, or it was just keeping you stuck in a rut, or whatever the case may be, then this is that kind of reality check moment of kind of going, okay, this doesn't necessarily feel good, but not everything does feel good, that there is a natural it's natural to sort of to feel loss or grief or sadness about the ending of something, but then we kind of pick ourselves up and we carry on, and we get on with our lives, type of thing. And then there isn't really much happening for the rest of the week until we get to Friday the 16th, and here the Sun is now making an opposition to Neptune. So and we have a square between Venus and Mars. So I would expect that this week is likely to be quite tumultuous, as I say, particularly for things like relationships with Venus and Mars. But of course, Venus and Mars also rule things like, like art and money and like physical health, our sort of style of taking action or not, physical activity, all of those kind of things. So there could be a lot of ways that this energy could work, but nonetheless, I think that it's likely to be a day where we are feeling a little bit maybe sad or disillusioned. Again, a little bit of confusion with that opposition between the Sun and Neptune, which will feed into this Mercury retrograde energy that we do have, that's kind of in play, for the rest of the month. And I think that's to be expected. I think you should just sort of try and build in contingency plans, plan B, or just accept that things are not necessarily going to go as quickly or smoothly as we like, and kind of, it's almost like once you make peace with that notion, then if anything does go well or better than expected, then we're sort of pleasantly surprised. That's that kind of energy. But it can be a time when we feel, as I say, a little bit confused, a bit down, where we can have trouble making clear decisions, or or sort of reason in a logical way. So we can sometimes kind of kid ourselves or talk ourselves out of something. So if you are worried about that, you might want to sort of have your best friend who tells you the truth, no matter how harsh it is on hand, just to sort of help you maintain perspective, whether that's you being too negative about a situation, or whether it's you were right to walk away, and don't sort of kid yourself like otherwise, type of thing. And with Venus and Mars, this is the classic sort of battle of the sexes, where there is this clash between sort of masculine and feminine energy, which can manifest in terms of relationships. It can be that that the masculine sort of aspect wants to be like free and doing other things because it's in Gemini. So there's this sense of like maybe being ambivalent, not being 100% committed to something. And Venus is of course in Virgo, which likes detail, precision, needs to know exactly where they stand. So it could be that that's the problem, is that Mars is being a little bit evasive or vague, non-committal, and Venus wants to sort of nail things down. There are a lot of ways that this energy could work, and I do talk about it a bit in the full moon forecast in more detail, but I think it's fair to say that there's a clash or a conflict of either values or of like needs or wants or desires, possibly creative aesthetics, or differences of opinion about how to go about something, whether this has to do with money or with like a creative project. And I think that the key thing is to try to sort of allow for differences. I think that Sun Neptune energy and the sort of the Pisces energy of the full moon is all about kind of accepting or surrendering, and sometimes that is the best course of action. It's not necessarily always like in our interests to like fight or kind of assert ourselves or feel that we have to sort something out immediately. Sometimes things are best left to be sort of sorted out in their own time, and you may sort of feel that possibly you're almost sort of, it's like walking through treacle or trying to sort of push a rock uphill now, that it's very difficult to actually as I say, make clear decisions or to sort of get things done. So if that is the case, then maybe just wait until another day when you feel more decisive, or when you feel more confident, or when it's clearer what you should sort of do. I think the best way to use Mercury retrograde is to sort of review, to go over, to reassess, maybe talk things through with somebody else to get clarity, and only when you're feeling clear again, then kind of make a decision. I mean, I think it's important to say that things do improve the following week with the energy. So as I say, it may just be a case of putting things off for a better times at this point. And then the next day on the 17th we have another quincunx between Venus and Chiron. So this is an opportunity to say goodbye to painful associations or ways of doing things, or habits, or that type of thing that are just not working, and to sort of really focus on healing. Chiron is a great healer, and it's so often about those wounds where we feel that we don't belong, where we're not accepted, where we've been rejected, where we feel alienated, or just freaky, different, that kind of thing. So it is giving us an opportunity to pivot towards more positive relationships, whether that be with ourselves, with another person, with money, with our creative process, whatever the case may be. Venus, you'll have to look to see where Venus, what kind of houses it rules in your chart, where it's located, etc., to sort of see how this is going to work on an individual level. But I think on a collective level, it is really about letting go of what's not working, and having the courage to do that, because better things are coming, as we'll see when we get to the energies for the following week. So moving to the Sunday, we have one last difficult aspect, and that's an opposition between Mercury and Jupiter. Now, we've had this aspect before. We had it on the 3rd of September, so it's a repeat of that energy, because Mercury is now retrograde, so it's moving back towards Jupiter. So if things, for whatever reason, if you had a difference of opinion with somebody, maybe an argument, or your thinking about something was maybe like a little bit faulty or overconfident, or you want to revise your opinion on something, then now's a good day to do that. But I mean, you could find, as I say, that you and another person have a bit of a standoff again, where you are both at opposite ends of a sort of a polarity. And as with any opposition, the best thing is to try and meet in the middle, and if not, then just accept, agree to differ, that type of thing. But it is about mentally pushing your limits. Sometimes it can be about, learning and travel. It certainly has to do with judgment. And as I say, don't be surprised if during this particular week of the Mercury retrograde, that your judgment is a little bit blunted, if you like, or stunted. And then just reserve the right to sort of give an opinion or a decision at a later date. I think that's probably the best way to sort of work with this energy, because as we'll see, the energies that follow this are really, really positive. But interestingly, Mars then, after coming off of that square to Venus, we've got Venus making a quincunx to Chiron, but we've got Mars making a sextile. So this is, again, it's another opportunity for the Mars aspect. Now, this could be the sort of divine masculine within ourselves, or it could be somebody who represents that sort of masculine energy that we're in relationship with, also getting an opportunity to heal on some level. So this is kind of love, pain, the whole damn thing, time to take. It can be about healing rifts, or it can be about sort of like internal healing, and that could be physical with Mars, certainly it can be about the physical body, about energy levels, or it can just be about pivoting and directing your energy more positively towards something that's going to be more constructively beneficial to you. If you have been sort of like throwing good money after bad in the sort of the literal or the metaphorical sense. So yes, I think it's very much a time of kind of pivoting, of letting go, and this is all falling into this notion of kind of making positive changes. Sometimes before we can sort of, what is that saying? We have to lose sight of the old, of sort of, of the shore before we can discover new land. So there's that sense of having to first close something out, or sort of let go of something, or process kind of grief or loss on one level, and then that allows us to make space for something better to come in. And I mean, as I say, the energies from then onwards are pretty positive. So we've got on the 19th we've got the Sun making a trine to Pluto, and of course again this is excellent for very sort of self-empowered change, kind of really making sometimes quite dramatic changes to our lives. Pluto can be about catharsis and about letting go again. It can be about deep healing. It can be about regeneration. Again, it will depend on how these planets work in your natal chart as to the specifics, but it's certainly about that very instinctive drive to make changes, and it is a lot about self-empowerment, about feeling, kind of coming into your power, coming into your truth, standing in it, and then making changes that are going to align you with that more sort of clearly. And then the next day, Venus makes a trine to Uranus, so again echoing the energy of the Sun on the 11th. And again, I think this feeds into what I was saying about making positive changes when it comes to things like relationships, creative projects, and sort of money matters. Of course, it could also have something to do with physical appearance, if you've got Venus in the first house, for example, or you've got Venus rising or something like that. But it could also be a time when exciting new creative people, projects, or sort of situations suddenly come into your life. And the key thing is to sort of be open to the new, to say yes, to kind of say why not, and to sort of go with the flow. To welcome change into your life, because it's with the positive aspects, with the trine, it certainly does kind of bode well. So, you might have kind of unusual, quirky people coming into your life now, and even though they might not be your usual type of people, I think that the key is to sort of open yourself up to the opportunity to sort of maybe explore like other areas of your identity, or your creativity, or whatever this person sort of stirs up in you. But it's definitely about positive changes. And then we don't have again aspects until the 23rd, when Mercury moves back into Virgo, so giving you an opportunity to sort of get more precision in terms of things like communication, maybe things you've written, to tick things off your to-do list, or to redo things that you didn't feel you did properly the first time round. It's a good time to draw up things like schedules, to go back and rearrange your diary, and to just generally kind of get organized. It's really good for mental organization. So as I say, if you were feeling a bit woolly on the 16th with that Sun-Neptune opposition, now's a good time to sort of try and clarify and organize and sort of, get a little bit more clear. And then, of course, on the same day, this is also the day of the equinox, and that's when the Sun ingresses into the sign of Libra. So again, it's a day that kind of has to do with balance. It's when the Sun reaches the equator and moves from one hemisphere to another. So it's essentially a tipping point, when we either move from kind of summer into winter, or when we move from winter into summer, depending on what hemisphere we're sort of based in. So this is about a time of diplomacy. Generally speaking, this is Libra season, a time for diplomacy, for kind of peacekeeping, or for seeking justice or more balance. There's a lot here about harmony, symmetry, and beauty, and it's also a good time to sort of socialize with loved ones and that kind of thing. It's interesting that the Sun and Mercury will be making a conjunction, because, as I say, they are kind of passing each other and going in opposite directions. So it's almost like ships in the night. So it'll be interesting to see how that energy manifests, as to whether it manifests in literally you and another person sort of bumping into each other, maybe an old friend or somebody you haven't seen for a while, and sort of having a wonderful kind of reunion, or whether it's the sense of kind of encountering something from your past, whether it's a thought, whether it's something you wrote maybe a long time ago that you'd forgotten about, whatever the case may be, and then having it sort of give you a little aha moment, or a little light bulb kind of almost going off, and perhaps setting you off on a sort of an interesting thought trajectory, something like that, a chance meeting that sort of moves you in a different direction. And then on the 24th we have a slightly less positive sort of aspect. We've got Venus making opposition to Neptune, so similar to the Sun on the 16th. You can see that the Sun and Venus are sort of shadowing each other. And again, this could be tricky for relationships. So it can be a time where if we have decided to sort of walk away from a romantic situation, with that Venus-Mars square, we may sort of now doubt our sort of decision-making ability. Did we do the right thing? We can sometimes be a little bit gullible or impressionable right now, and we can also kid ourselves. So it's a very important time, not to make big or important life decisions, and to sort of, as I say, have that friend on standby who's going to sort of like talk some sense into us if we are having a sort of like a weak moment, or kind of doubting ourselves, or just sort of sinking into a little bit of a depression. You might want to find somebody who is going to sort of cheer you up and take you out and distract you, that kind of thing. And we can also want to escape. There can be the sense of wanting to sort of like, to take off somewhere, or to sort of like hide from the world and watch box sets, or that kind of thing. And of course, that energy isn't necessarily a bad thing, if you don't have any other responsibilities and you do want to just lose yourself in a story, or visit an art gallery, or watch an inspirational film. Sometimes stories can be a really good way to process, things that are going on with us. So not necessarily a bad thing. It's just all about context, and sort of like, first of all, having good boundaries, because as I say, Neptune does tend to make us drop our boundaries and make us compromise on our values. But also, just having a safe space where we can sort of like maybe collapse into a messy heap, without sort of feeling that it's you're going to be judged, or you're going to be vulnerable, or anything like that. So making a sort of a safe space for yourself in which to sort of to do that, scream, cry, or whatever the case may be, and then do it in privacy, and then kind of pick yourself up and sort of move on again. Not much happening on the Sunday, and then on Monday the 26th, things get quite busy again. So we've got the Sun opposing Jupiter, we've got Mercury and Venus sort of meeting up, and then we've also got Venus making a trine to Pluto. So you can see that the Mercury does the same thing the next day to sort of follow suit. So the Sun, Venus and Mercury slowly kind of coming together, because they do tend to sort of stay within close proximity of each other. I think Venus is never more than 60 degrees away from the Sun, and Mercury slightly less so. So it's kind of an interesting time, I think, of trying to sort of to make decisions and like get clear about your values, and have like interactions with other people in a way that's going to bring you clarity, and that's going to bring you that's healthy. If you think about Venus and Mercury, they are both in the sign of Virgo, and Virgo is so much about health and about discernment, and that was a big theme at the Virgo new moon that we had at the beginning of September. So this is this real kind of sense of needing to get clear about what you value, what's healthy for you, and then making changes that are going to again bring that in. So with the Venus Pluto trine, there's a sense of needing to get really kind of honest with yourself, with others, about what you value, what's important to you, what your needs are, voicing those, and then being brave enough, if somebody isn't able to meet those, to kind of go, okay, that's fine, but I need to sort of like make some changes here, or maybe move in a different direction, or that kind of thing. But I mean, it is with the trine, it is a positive thing. I think it has probably more to do with a change of values and a change of mindset, given that we are talking about Venus and Mercury here. And with the Sun opposing Jupiter, it could be that somebody else is trying to sort of weigh in or interfere or give you advice, and perhaps they're well-meaning, but they don't necessarily fully understand the situation, or are, I don't know, just maybe a little bit overconfident in terms of their judgment, that they think, my way is the only way type of thing, my truth is the only truth. And I think that probably best to sort of distance yourself from people that are overbearing or self-righteous, or that want to sort of meddle, and just try and find a place of clarity, with that Pluto, to try and come into a place of self-empowerment, where you kind of feel like, I can do this, I can I'm not saying like, don't rely on other people. It's just that sense of like self-reliance, that you have the capability within yourself to kind of step into your power, whether it is through your kind of reasoning abilities or your ability to discern what your needs or your values are, and then being able to sort of have the confidence to sort of make decisions that are going to move you closer sort of towards that truth or that power, move you in a kind of a positive direction. And I think what will be helping you will be this triangle that's happening on the 28th between Mars and Saturn. So this is really a fantastic combination for making a decision and then constructively like making things happen. It's about sort of focus, it's about discipline, it's about endurance, and it's really about accomplishment. You can like move mountains with this kind of energy. It's really helps you to push through blocks, obstacles, whether those be internal or sort of external, to make progress, to take constructive action that's going to sort of lead somewhere. So in that sense, really, really positive, fabulous for work of all kinds. But equally, I think important for pushing through some of this more nebulous, sometimes slightly flaky energy of Neptune that can make us kind of go, I don't really know what to do for the best, and sort of become a bit apathetic, or sometimes a little bit like feel sorry for ourselves, or become like want to escape, through numbing or sort of activities that are sort of designed to sort of like be pleasurable escapes, but aren't necessarily like going to get us where we need to go, if you know what I mean. So I think this Mars Saturn trine can really help us to have the discipline and endurance to sort of to move forward, to make progress, to take action, constructive action towards something that is going to be better for us in the long term. And then on the 29th, Venus moves into her own sign of Libra, so we'll have both the Sun and Venus in Libra now. And hopefully that should sort of bring in a more harmonious time for us in terms of relationships, money and creativity, that things should start to settle down a little bit. That this period could potentially be quite intense, that it's not necessarily the easiest sort of time in which to sort of to kind of operate. But yeah, I mean, as I say, we do have the new moon in Libra, which happens on the 25th, and I think that should really help us to sort of have that's the emotional impetus, and that's sort of subconscious impetus that we need to sort of make a fresh start or a change. So anyway, I've kind of gone a little bit further than I usually do with my forecast, so I'm going to stop there, and I'll pick up again from the new moon on the 25th again, just to kind of recap. But I hope that's been helpful. Yes, just be good to yourself and be kind to yourself over the next couple of weeks, and I'll see you again in a fortnight or so for our next update.